Greetings! Welcome back to the Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel. This video is going to be the third in our little series of how to draw plans and patterns. And in this one, we're going to go from working with like round format carving patterns, which you have a lot of wiggle room, right? You have a lot of wiggle room, okay, when you're doing carving patterns. Because you're going to make a rough cutout based on that pattern, and then you're going to do all of the regular work with your carving knife or your carving tools, however you're doing your carving. And it's going to end up looking like how your eye wants it to look at the end of the day, right? The pattern is a loose guideline to get you started. When you get into more of like a furniture build or something like that, where you're going to have to cut a bunch of pieces, and they're going to have to fit together nicely into a finished shape with a bunch of pieces in it, you have none of that wiggle room. Okay, so this is where mechanical drawing and drafting come in. And what I want to do for this video is to take a very simple form, and my example is just two pieces of wood glued together. It's two scraps of wood from underneath the pile and underneath the workbench, right? Just Elmer's glued together to give a simple form that we can work with. And I'm going to show you how to do accurate, precise, measured drawings that can be used as a plan. Now I know that my example isn't the most exciting example, it's just two 2x4s stuck together, right? But I recommend doing something like this before you try to do something complicated. Go pick two random 2x4s, glue them in some random configuration, and do a practice drawing, right? I know everybody hates to do practice that isn't going to turn into a project, but you need to do the practice on this one, okay? So this is a practice example. I encourage you to do a practice drawing. And then the fourth in this series will actually draw some furniture, okay? But I want to do all of the tools, the techniques, and the principles here with a practice form so we can get through it in a reasonable amount of time. Okay. Now, just to kind of give you an example of this, as I keep saying in the series, as you advance in your craft, you're going to want to start with plans that somebody else drew, but you're going to want to move toward plans that you customized on your own, right? And I just have kind of an example of that, a project that's in process at the moment. I haven't started with the woodwork phase of it yet, but I've made my drawings and I've collected the wood, and the wood is still seasoning. It's just not quite ready yet. But I want to make the clamshell bookcases from this book, Campaign Furniture. Okay, they're really neat travel bookcases. But the plans that are in this book are sort of a standard design where everything's just kind of even shapes, right? The space is just divided evenly. But I want this for a very particular collection of books, which are I'm just going to show my nerd here again, my floras. So this is a flora, and it's a key for identifying plants. And I have a collection of these, and I want to make them their own bookshelf, and none of them are standard sizes, right? They're either big chunks like this, or they're little guys that can almost slip in your pocket, right? So I need shelves for them, but I don't need standard size shelves because there isn't one standard size book in the entire collection. So I took those patterns, and based on those patterns, I drew these. Okay, so this is my extension of a base set of plans in the book, right? And this is the sort of thing that you're going to want to be able to do. Okay, so this is called an isometric view, where you're drawing things with the illusion of three-dimensionality. We're going to do that. We're also going to do a three-view plan of the same piece of wood. And we're going to go through all of the tools, the types of pencils and pens and squares and everything that you need to get started. And if you're interested in this, let's dig in. So here's the basic toolkit. You can add all sorts of other stuff to this, but you don't need it to get started with a simple mechanical drawing. You need the ability to measure, the ability to draw a straight line, the ability to erase the lines you don't want, and the ability to draw your line in the first place. So your most important tools are going to be your erasing tools. So you'll want two types of erasers. You'll want a large eraser for when you're just cleaning up a big area, okay? And you'll want something that's a little bit more precise. So I really like these kind of, these I don't know what you call them, but these little erasers that remind me of a mechanical pencil, right? I like these because you've got that little nib and you can get right in and erase something quite accurately, okay? To complement the erasers, you will want the erasing shield. It's a very thin piece of metal, and you'll use it to mask a region you don't want to erase, so you can go and erase something adjacent to it cleanly. Right? These are, like $3 to $4. Not expensive. I've seen them for sale at cheap marts. Any decent craft supply that has any kind of drafting materials will sell those. They're very common, very inexpensive, and get one, right? Don't skip on that. You will regret it. Then you'll need to measure. I do recommend that you get a stainless steel rule. Get a good metal rule and take care of it. Okay? Wood rules are horrifically inaccurate. Okay, they're very coarse, very inaccurate. Don't use them. Plastic rules can be accurate, but the numbers and markings tend to rub off quickly, and then they lose their accuracy. Metal rules will hold up for a long time. You do want one with both standard and metric. Even though I am a big lover of the metric system, I prefer the metric system across the board. I still do use imperial units quite a bit when I'm drawing, simply because that's what all of the reference material I have starts with, and that is where, here in the United States, that's where we live when we purchase materials, right? So I still do things in that. But anytime I have to do math related to my project, I remeasure it in metric and do my math in metric and draw it that way. Okay, so I do use both, often on the same project. You do need the ability to measure angles quickly. The most important square is this 30, 60, 90. You will need that to draw your isometric projection. Okay, and you'll want these in a couple different sizes. You will also want to get 45, 45, 90, and usually you'll buy these in like a kit of 3 or 4 of them, right? And again, not expensive. Usually these are just a couple bucks a piece. Don't spend a lot of money on these. There's no need to. I do like the clear ones because they let you see through and see where you are in your drawing, so you don't end up fishing around getting lost on your drawing. So I do like these, but you can get opaque ones or colored ones, whatever suits your fancy. But you do need this. Okay. And then for marking tools, first, take your standard pencil and throw it away. We're not going to use him. What you want is you want a pencil that has this little metal collar on it. Okay? Good mechanical pencils have this. And that lets you run that collar right along the edge of your square without getting black pencil lead all over the edge of your square and thus smearing up your drawing like crazy. And you want these in a couple of different sizes. So this one is 0.07. I am going to be doing things a little bit bigger and a little bit darker than I normally would, because if I draw the light layout lines that I usually draw when I'm just doing this for myself, they will never pick up in the camera and you won't see them. So I'm going to deliberately break the rules so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay. The sizes I recommend getting are 0.03 and 0.05 or 0.07 for your larger one. It makes a difference just how wide you want your line. It's nice to have a selection so you can start to do things with different line widths to show information that way. Okay, but you want the small line with a hard lead to make your layout lines so that they don't make permanent marks on your page and are easy to erase. That keeps your page clean. And then you want the larger, softer lead for going over those and darkening them in. Okay? And on the topic of lead hardness, this is a pack of 0.5 millimeter leads. And this is HB hardness. That's the hardness rating right there. So you have a hard range and a soft range. The hard range is some number with an H. 9H is the hardest, and it goes down through 2H and then H. Okay. Usually they don't write 1H. They just put the H there. 9H being the hardest, 1H being the softest on that end of the scale. HB is dead center in the scale. And then B are your soft grades. So 1B is the hardest of the soft grades, and 9B is the softest of the soft grades. So 9H is hard as granite, and it's hard to get it to even make a mark on your page. 9B is so soft, if you look at it in a stern tone of voice, it will start to crumble on you, right? It's more like a charcoal than a graphite. Okay, so the softer the lead, the darker the line. So that's your other control on line darkness, right? So if you use a large, really soft lead for all of your layout lines, even after you erase them, you're just going to be left with myriad smudges. And then the other way that we can darken in lines when we're finished all of our layout is we can use these drafting pens, and that's 0.01 and 0.03 millimeter. And if I pull the tops off of these, you can see they still have those metal collets around very, very fine nibs. Okay, so we can get nice, even, accurate lines with those if you want to darken in with pen instead of pencil. And you can often get mechanical pencils with this steel nib. That's almost standard for a lot of mechanical pencils these days. So you can find these at a cheap mart, even without having to go to a place that sells specialty drafting supplies. You won't always find them, but sometimes you can find them. Likewise, some of these really fine permanent markers come with that metal collet there. Same deal, right? This is totally legitimate to use, and that's about 0.07, I'm pretty sure. So that's my third thickness of line that I have available in the markers. I prefer, when I'm doing my own work, to darken in with pencil because it doesn't fade or bleed. It's just my preference. It will smudge, it can be erased, but if somebody is pulling out my drawings and smudging or erasing my drawings, then there's a problem beyond, like, the fact, there's a problem beyond what you used, right? They're not going to smudge sitting rolled up in a tube or folded in a pack of papers, right? So I like the pencil because it doesn't fade ever. It is the most indelible way to mark a page. Yes, you could erase it, but it's the most indelible way to mark a page. A lot of people like the pens, and with these being so readily available now, a lot of people have switched to those. It's your preference. There's not a right or a wrong way. I'll show you how to properly darken lines with the pencil, and I'll show you with the pen as we go through this drawing. This is what we're going to do for a practice piece. Like I said, this is practice. You need to do this. You need to, work out your technique on something simple, right? And I can draw this in a reasonable amount of time, and this won't turn into a 5-hour video. So, we're going to start with a 3-view drawing. The front view will be what you see just looking on edge here. Okay, then the top view will be what you see in this plane. And then the side view will be what you see in this plane. Okay? A 3-view drawing. We're going to draw this full scale. Now, the first thing we want to do when we set up to do a drawing is you're going to want to do one drawing on one page. You want to keep things separate and nice, neat, even projects. Okay? So we're going to want to mark some margins, and I'm going to draw this with imperial units because, again, that's just what this wood is cut to, and I'm going to do this full scale. So I'm just going to make my margin 1 inch. So I'm going to mark 1 inch in from the perforation there, and I'm going to mark 1 inch up from the bottom. Now, when I'm marking up from the bottom, I'm lining the ruler up with the perforation so it's approximately straight. Ooh, sorry there, I just bumped the camera stand behind me. And then the same thing when I'm measuring 1 inch over, I'm lining it up with the bottom of the page, at least approximately. If you have your ruler canted, you will not get an accurate measurement. So you want to get it as close to square as possible to line up on something as much and as often as you can. And that will help you keep accurate measurements, and that will prevent you from having parallel lines that converge with each other, right? If you just try to guess where square is, you will have a lot of problems. So those aren't quite at exactly the same spot, but you can see here where my corner is right about there, right? Now the next thing you have to know is that the edges of your paper are never square. You cannot assume that this is a true 90-degree angle. It isn't. If you line up on that, you will always end up with error as you go along your project. But we need to line up with something to draw a first mark. So I'm going to get this as square to the perforations as I can. And I'm just going to draw over a first mark. Now when you're doing layout lines like this, you want to write lightly so that you don't crease the paper with your pencil. If you push hard and crease the paper with your pencil, it will hold that lead and you won't be able to erase your lines. So everything done initially is done fine and light. Now for a vertical, I'm going to line up on this first line. And draw that up there. Okay? So now all other lines on this drawing will come from these. And if ever in doubt, remember the order in which you drew your lines? This came first, that came second. So if ever there's a disagreement, return to your original line. Now I'm going to continue this all the way across the page, like so. And we have a margin with a true 90-degree angle. Now you'll always want to label your work, right? Some name of project, scale, and any notes you might have. And it is traditional to label these in just all caps because it's very easy to read, and simple block letters. Nothing fancy. You want it to be legible to another person. It doesn't need to be any particular fancy font, right? This is just for information. Now, of course, if it's just your drawing for yourself, you can invent your own font of some sort of, cursive Morse code. I don't care. It's for you. But when we're doing this and we have the thought that we might one day want to share some of these, writing it in all caps, block letters, is a very convenient way to label these because it's very easy for everybody to read. Okay? Now, we're actually going to start our drawing, and once again, I'm going to measure over an inch from each margin. Okay? And I'm going to do another pair of layout lines. And I'm going to extend these lines much farther than you would initially think I will need. All three views are going to start from these two initial layout lines. Okay? We're just going to go far and wide with this. Now, the first thing we want to do when we actually start to lay out our our object is draw the basic box that it occupies for all three views. Okay? So, if you look here, the basic box for the front view is going to be 5 inches by 2¼ inches. Okay? So I'm going to come over. This is 5 inches to there, and 2¼ inches to there. Now once again, notice I'm going back to my original layout lines, right? This line was first, this line was second, this line was third, this line was fourth. Every time you draw a line, you're introducing the possibility for error. So I'm not going to draw this off of the fourth line I drew. I'm going to draw this off of the second line that I drew. Okay? And then, again, vertically, I'm going to go back to this first line. This is how you prevent error creep. Okay? So right here, this region is the basic box for the front view. Now the top view will occupy the same vertical space. So the basic box of the top view has already been defined in this dimension. I need to see what it is lengthwise. And it is 6 and 5/16. Okay, so I'm going to go up an inch, and then I'm going to go 6 and 5/16 there. Okay, now again, I'm going to go back to my primary lines, connect this. Okay. And then on this one, we need the side view, which is that way. Okay. So here, I'm sorry, I'm going to do it that way, right? So now, just like when I start here and I flip this up there, I have my primary lines defined here. When I'm here and I flip this way, I have my primary lines defined here already. Okay? So, once again, I'm going to come over an inch. And then this was 6 and 5/16, yes, 6 and 5/16. Right to there. Now, notice I didn't extend this on the ruler. Part of keeping your drawing clean is keeping that ruler clean, because you're going to slide that around a lot. And the fewer things that have pencil marks on them, the better. So I'm going to connect that line over with the square, come back to my primary measurement, extend that line up, and then extend that line over. Okay. Oh, I missed one. I missed a line. Sorry, folks. Sorry, folks. Okay, so there's our three views. Now you see there's a lot of lines on here that we don't need. This is where the erasing shield and eraser come in. So I want to keep that corner nice and square, but I want to get rid of that line. So I'll put the erasing shield right there. get rid of that line. And here, see, I erased the top, and now I'll put the erasing shield here, even with that line, and get the rest of it. I'll do that in reverse right on this one. This is why this is so handy. And this is also why we're starting with deliberately light lines. And you have these insets where you can isolate two things if you don't want to erase a big wide area. Okay, one left. Good. There's all of our basic boxes. Now, don't smear your hand over it. Take a big old paintbrush and dust it off with a paintbrush. That will help you. You saw I instinctively kind of flicked a couple things. That will help keep your paper clean and free from an undue number of smudges. Okay? Now, we want to look at and see, at least I'm trying to angle this so it's straight on with the camera lens here. We want to look and see what we will see. So in this view, we will see the perimeter. And then the only other thing we will see is this transition. So we want to come and we want to measure, I think that was 3/4. Yep, that's 3/4. So we want to measure a 3/4 inch up. Okay. Put a mark there. Now, that mark counts for two things, right? Because in this view, that's going along here, but in this view, we also see that line, right? So when I draw this, again, the fewer the number of times you have to put something on the piece of paper and draw a line, the more accurate you're going to be overall. So get this lined up nice. And now I'm going to draw this all the way across there. And then halfway across there, right? Because if you look at it in this direction, can they see this, beloved? Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you look in this direction, it only goes part of the way across. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay. When you look at this, you can only see that part of the way across. So I don't need to draw it all the way across, but I'll get it the better part of the way across. So that is all we will see in the simple end view. But I need to define that here. So I need to measure how wide this is, and that's right on 3 inches. So I need to measure 3 inches over. Okay, we'll take that up, and then actually my brain got ahead of myself. I do need to move this line all the way along. Okay, because that's that horizontal. So here is this block, here is that horizontal, and now I get my erasing shield back out, and we remove that cutout. Okay, so there's the front view finished. The side view finished. And then the top view as drawn with this here. Okay, I will draw that with this in the front. Okay, so again, that's 3 inches. So I need to come 3 inches up. And then draw that across. And then that needs no further modification. So from these three views, you can completely describe that piece. Not counting the old screw holes as, like I said, it's scrap wood. I don't care about that. Just drawing the basic shape here. Okay? Now, the last thing that we will want to do is we will want to darken this, and then we will want to label distances. Okay? So when we darken it, this line would be a good way to show. I'll show you how to do this with a pencil, and I will show you how to do this with the pens. It is faster to do it with the pens, but like I was saying earlier, the pencil is more indelible than any permanent marker. Okay, so I still like the pencil. To keep an even line width, you want to go over this repeatedly while twirling it so that it is continually sharpening its own points. Okay, that's how you keep an even line width. And you want to go over it repeatedly, lightly, not once with a ham-fisted death grip. Okay? Again, this has to do with erasability and cleanliness of your paper. If you do this once with a ham-fisted death grip, you will never be able to erase that line. It will be carved into the paper. Okay? If you do this lightly, about 10 times, just with the pen's weight, maybe a little bit of the just gravity weight of your two fingers. It won't crease the paper, and you can still erase even a very dark line. So I will get the square set up just nice on that line, and then I'm going to mark and twirl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can see that is a jet black surface line.
That is so cool.
Okay? And then if you're doing it with the pen, let me draw this one down the middle here. Same deal. But one smooth, even marking. And you can see, I think the pencil even made a better line than the pen. That was the 0.03. I'll do the bottom with 0.01. You can see the difference. Okay, slightly finer. And then I'll do the top with the regular boring Sharpie marker, the unfancy version. Okay, so that's the darkest yet because it's a slightly wider nib. But you can see, I think that my pencil line is darker, nicer, and more even than the 3 pen lines. The advantage to the pen is that it won't smudge. So if you need this to really, truly be smudge proof, and you don't care about archival quality, you can go over all the lines with the pen, and then go over all the lines with the eraser, and get rid of all of the smudgeable graphite. Okay, that is a way to do it. Now, the last thing that we would want to do would be to do dimension marks. Okay, and when we're doing this, we're going to come with the line, skip about 1/8 of an inch, and then draw a line about a 1/2 inch. I'm just going to do with this once off with the dark pen here. Same thing here. Okay. Then we'll do the vertical. And then we'll come and I'll put some more on the top. for an overall dimension. So that indicates what we're measuring from what. And then in the middle of those, I'm going to line up my square again with my primary line. And I'm going to draw a line with half dart arrows. Don't quite, again, stay about 1/8 of an inch away from your two lines there. And then come in by hand and draw your half darts. Just like that. Come in with your side. Now I should have waited to write the front on this, but I can just skip over that. There's my half dart arrows there. Again, line up on my primary line here.
Question.
Yeah.
What's the point of doing the half dart arrows?
Tradition.
Okay.
These are traditionally like half barb, right? And then you're going to write on these lines the measurements, right? So this across the front, that's 5 inches. This is 3/4 inch. This is 1.5 inches. And then for the total height, 2.25 inches. Okay? And then there you're writing in your actual dimensions. So once everything is darkened in, then you would put those in, and then you could add any extra annotation that you think it needs. Okay? But this is your standard 3-view drawing on a very simple example. Okay. Now I want to prepare a new clean sheet. I'm going to draw the basic margins in to start with, and I will show you how to do an isometric drawing, which is the 3-dimensional projection of this same object. See you in a sec. So I prepared this page just like I did before, and we're going to start again with a basic box. I'm going to use this as the front view this time. And this is our 2.25 by 6 5/16 measurement. Okay. So we're going to start sketching that in. Just like so. Draw our lines. Again, just as before, always starting from our primary source of evidence. And there we have that basic box. Now we want to come in it, come down the 1.5 inches, and what was that measurement? That was 3, okay? So we want to come down 1.5 inches. That was 3/4. Yep, good. And then 3 inches. Always going back to our first 2 lines. Primary source of evidence. Scribe that one all the way across. And this one, scribe up. Okay? Now, we can go ahead and do a little bit of erasing here because this is going to get complicated in a hurry. So we'll right off the bat get rid of what we don't need with our friendly neighborhood erasing shield that we quite enjoy. So this is where these little cutouts come in handy. So this little line in the middle, I use the cutout on the bottom and the cutout on the top to take out the ends, and I can just take out the middle freehand. And then train yourself. Use the paintbrush. It's not going to make a big deal on as simple a drawing as this, but it will make a big deal when you're doing something more complicated. Okay, so that's this. Now the difference is we're going to get all these views into one image. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines going back in this direction. Okay, I'm going to draw them, but I'm not going to draw them on the 90 degree. I'm going to draw them on a 60 degree. Okay? So this line going back, we know it's literally 90. But a projection is a mathematical distortion from reality, which allows you to show more information than you could on a simple, literal, two-dimensional page. Okay? So I'm going to still be going from my primary line down here. I'm going to hit that corner, and I'm going to use this 60 degree on my 30, 60, 90 triangle. Describe that back. 60 degree. $60. Get that out of the way, and that out of the way, and that out of the way. I apologize to all you folks. I keep hitting the camera stand with my elbow.
I'm stabilizing it.
Thank you, sweetie pie. Okay. So, this is that line, this is that line, this is that corner, this is that corner, and this is that bottom corner. Okay. Now, we can't see, these lines still exist, but we can't see them. That's okay, because we have enough information in the drawing to infer that they exist. Now, what was this measurement? I think this was 5 inches. Yeah, that was 5 inches. Okay. So I'm going to measure back 5 inches once. Okay. Now when I'm drawing the back face is parallel to the front face. So this is going to be drawn on the 90 degree again. Okay. So we come and we draw this 90 degrees across. And then this is down. Sorry, you can't see it up there. This is down, so that's 90 degrees down. And then 90 degrees across. And then 90 degrees down. So we can just step our way all the way across this from one initial measurement. Okay? Mm-hmm. And in this particular piece, that's it. All we need to do now is clean it up. I'll do that quickly here. And then darken the lines. But that's how it's put together. These can be tricky. Sometimes you just have to fiddle around until you find the right cutout that lets you get into the corner that you need to get into. And sometimes the erasing shield is just going to let you down, and that's when that sort of eraser comes in handy. Mm-hmm. If you have a really tight corner. Okay. So there's our isometric projection of this object. Now we would come back and we would darken our lines as normal, right? Just as with the last drawing. What I do want to note is that when it comes time to put dimensions in, and we draw our line extensions, arrows and darts, arrows and barbs, you want to do it at the same angle that you drew the original lines. So when my lines are drawn on the 60-degree angle, my line extensions are going to be on the 60-degree angle. And the line that I'm measuring is on the 90. So my arrows and barbs are going to be on the 90. Okay. Now the last thing we need to talk about here, and I apologize, we kind of lost our light. The camera battery died and we had to recharge it. But the last thing we need to talk about is when we do the line extensions and the arrows to write dimensions on. Okay, it's the same as before, but you want to draw your line extension on the same angle that you drew the original line. So since this line was drawn on the 60, that line extension will also be drawn on the 60. Since this line that's being measured is on the 90, the line showing its dimension, and the half arrow line here showing its dimension, will also be on the 90. Okay, so that is just a little bit extra thing to think about, but not too much of an extra thing to think about. And this is the basics. Now there's a lot more you can do. There's a lot more to drafting. There's a lot more to showing perforations, roundnesses, ellipses when you have to show a perforation isometric. In the 3 views, there's other ways to project your lines from one view to another to double check everything. And then when you get into curved irregular work like boats and round work and carvings, right, then there's other ways of working with round lines. We've shown some of that in previous videos. We'll show more in future ones. But this is the basics. And drawing this simple isometric view of this little block of wood is absolutely the same as this set of plans with which we started this video. There's just a lot more lines and a lot more to think about in this. But working through the process step by step by step is still the same concept. That's why I say make sure you get something simple to practice with and then work up from there. It's not more difficult, but it is more complex just because there's a lot more going on, a lot more to keep track of, and a lot more opportunities to goof up where a line is going and where it's coming from. So we will move on to more complex real objects that you might actually want to make in the next video in this series. But if you've enjoyed this, I would be most grateful if you gave it a thumbs up because it helps the YouTube algorithm know to show it to other folks. And I hope that you've gotten something out of it and that you'll have a blessed day and join us next time at Old Ways Rising Farm.